Aeneas, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for making some time for JBK on air. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me, my guy. I know it's been a while since I've seen you, but
yeah,
always glad to catch up with you when I do see you, man.
Yeah, and I can tell you as a Colts fan, it's been painful the last few years. I'm trying to, have some confidence with the team moving forward. But the thing that kind of sparked my interest, Aeneas White, for those that don't know, he's a former college football player. We went to school together at the University of Indianapolis. But the thing that kind of sparked my interest in football was Peyton Manning, growing up with him as my quarterback. And I wanted to know if there was any experience that you recall that kind of drew you to the game and sparked your interest.
For me, it was my older cousins. They're much older than me. I think the closest one, I'm 27 now. The closest one in age to me is 32. So growing up, watching them play, all of them, there was 3 of them, that really sparked my interest in playing in general. What drew me to the TV, the Ravens, actually, that 2000s Raven team. Different set of breed at that point, but yeah, that's where the love started and kicked off for me.
Yeah, and you played safety. You were the hard hitting safety on UND's defense. How much of an inspiration was Ed Reed, the Hall of Fame safety?
Oh man, I tried my best to model the energy he brought. But the physical nature of him and Ray Lewis at the same time.
Yeah, I remember Ray Lewis being on the cover of Madden 2005. That was Ray at his prime. And I think we would both agree that quarterback's probably the most important position in sports. But behind quarterback, if you're a GM, what's the next thing you pick, man?
Oh God, as a GM, if I've already got a good quarterback, even though I hate the guys on that side of the ball, it's gonna have to be somebody on that line. I'm probably going with a center because I need somebody to control the rest of the meatheads up there too.
Not a left tackle to protect him.
Nah, I need a center first. You can worry about the tackle next, but I need the center first.
Fair enough. So let's go back to high school, because is that when you started playing? That's probably the first real competitive football you played. Did you play like Pop Warner when you were younger, or did you wait until high school?
So I started actually when I was 3.5 years old. So those cousins of mine who played, their mother was on the board of that team or that organization. And there may have been a slippage of numbers on a birth certificate that allowed me to play at 3.5. So I was out there 3.5 years old playing with 6, 7, 8-year-olds, and played all the way through college.
Okay. And was it a situation where you were maybe the bigger kid out of the group, so you played offensive line initially and then you had to adapt? I mean, have you always stayed on one side of the ball, or was it something where you had to kind of find your place and your role on a team?
So throughout all of the years that I played, I've somehow managed to play every position on the field. But I did start off as a nose guard because I was one of the big kids out there.
Okay. And
roly-poly out there on the field.
And a lot of the football players that I knew in Carmel were talented in other sports, and they would play different sports, in their off season just to stay in shape and stay in tune with being athletic. Were you a multi-sport athlete?
Yes. So I played baseball up until my sophomore year of high school. I wrestled for about 7 years in between there. Played basketball here and there. And then I ran track for about 3 weeks.
What happened there, dude?
So because my football coach found out that I wasn't playing baseball in the spring of my junior year. So he asked me to run track. And so I agreed to it. I had nothing else to do. Okay. And then about 2-3 weeks into the season, I strained my hip flexor and I was like, yep, I'm done. I'm out. And that was the end of my track career.
Yeah, short-lived, but um,
Absolutely.
so were you a highly touted recruit going back to high school? I mean, what was the recruiting process for you?
I was back in that era where they were really looking for kids with paper stats, so the height, the speed, the weight, all of that. And the height I did not possess. I still do not possess. The speed also not there. So it was a bunch of different schools. I was getting preferred walk-on conversations. I was getting money from D3, D2, smaller NAIA schools and things like that. But at that point, I was so focused with school at the time, just trying to get done with it, that I was not paying attention to that route at all. And then some coaches, I actually, Coach Gus, who was the D-line coach and the recruiter for my area when I was in school, gave me a call one night, and he didn't introduce himself. He also didn't say my name correctly. And so I didn't know who he was. I just heard him mispronounce my name, so I hung up the call. And
Right.
then a couple of days later, he showed up at my high school, and I remembered the voice, and I was like, uh-oh, I know that guy. I think I hung up on him. And sure enough, we had a conversation. I came down for a recruiting trip towards the end of January that year. I think I was one of the last recruiting trips for them that season.
Yeah.
Did well. Still ended up being a walk-on at first, and then eventually earned a scholarship at UND.
Okay. And I know that having gone there and having been around Coach Bart, like you don't go to UND with the intention of going to the NFL. So UND had to have had some draw of an academic background that you could gain while playing football, right?
Absolutely. So for me, it was a matter of finding a place, one that I could be successful at. And by successful, I mean on the field and at life afterwards. I felt that on the field, the coaching staff at UND showed me a lot of what I had at my high school that I really liked. So that was already a confidence booster for that one. And then as far as in life, Indianapolis is one of the biggest and best growing cities in the country right now as far as the job market and things like that. So
Yeah.
It was pretty easy with that one. And then it was also close enough for me to get home as far as being around my family and things like that, being from the Chicagoland area. And then, I wanted to be able to play somewhere where we were also going to win. I didn't want to be on a team that lost half their games every season. That just wouldn't have been fun to me. So it was pretty easy of a pick. I just had to make sure I earned my way into the scholarship that I deserved at that point.
Well, I can remember taking my first tour of the campus. I'm a guy wanting to be a student there, and I see the bubble and then the locker room that was built, because people need to understand when the Super Bowl was hosted in Indianapolis around that time, the University of Indianapolis was used as the training facility for the New York Giants. The NFL paid for an entire locker room and entire facility.
Pretty much, yeah.
So how much of an advantage was that recruiting wise, and just having that to go to in your spare time? That had to have been an advantage and a comfort for you to know that was there. Yeah,
absolutely. I know I took a couple visits to different schools, and that was top tier. The facilities at UND were definitely top tier for the list of schools that I visited.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was going to be a football junkie at that point. So it was like I needed somewhere that I can be comfortable and have a good time and also work at my craft while I was in school. And that arc or the bubble that you refer to is exactly that for me.
Well, and oddly enough, as I was taking the tour through the athletic area, Coach Bart was the first athletic coach I met. What made him the right coach for you? Because for a lot of college athletes, your coach is like an extension of your father. He's a guy that you can depend on throughout your life to help guide you.
So I had a really good relationship with my coach in high school. And when I talked to Bart on the few times that I did come down to Indy.
Yeah.
And I felt that same vibe and feel from him. And so at that point, it was me taking a chance that I was right. And it turned out that I was, luckily. 4 years out of school and football forever, and I still talk to him on a somewhat decent basis, check up on the old man every once in a while. But he taught me a lot about life, football, and myself. And so I'm very appreciative of the little man.
And, he certainly had control of the program. There's different styles that coaches employ to get their team's attention, to get the best results. What would you say Bart's style was in trying to coach the team?
He was a stickler, and he was stuck in his ways. He knew how to push the right buttons with different players. I was the type where if you needed more out of me, I fell down that old school path of yelling at me and cussing at me and embarrassing me in front of the team, and then you get more and better out of me at that point. So when it came to me, he pulled no punches. He reserved no cuss words. He let me have it every time he needed to. And when he didn't need to, he didn't need it. He didn't use it. So it was a good relationship there. And if there was a player who didn't have that or who didn't need that to be pushed, they needed to be talked to differently, he found a way to do that too. So I think he was a good coach from that perspective, getting the best out of his players the right way.
Yeah. And, one thing that I think has been more common now is like transferring out. How do you feel about like the transfer rule and all the things that go into that?
I think it evens. I don't want to say it evens the playing field, but it gives a lot of kids a better shot, because at the end of the day, the NCAA and college football is a business itself. And so a lot of these kids get sold dreams by these coaches thinking that they're going to have a certain role on a team or in a program, and they don't have that role. And so at that point, they're either stuck to make a decision whether they want to sit and try to fight through it or transfer and get out. And so the new transfer rules allowing these players to play immediately, I think, helps kids get out of bad situations. Right. Obviously, there's no perfect situation, so you'll have kids just running from good competition just to go somewhere to make their lives easier. But I think the overall concept and goal behind the rule is doing what it's supposed to do.
Okay, so let's go off the field a little bit. I'm trying to recall, what did you major in again, Aeneas?
Oh, well, it depends on what you were referring to. So when I first came to college, I was a chemistry major with a concentration in pre-dentistry.
Holy crap.
Yep.
That's daunting, brother.
It is. And I could have went through with it, but I was like, this is just not I'm not trying to do 17,000 years of school. I'm not trying to have to stay up at all hours of the night, every night for the whole time that I'm here. So I made a change and ultimately ended up with a major in computer information systems with a minor in computer science.
Okay. And that seems really broad. What would be some of the career paths you could take with something like that?
Oh, man. So that's a lot. The biggest one from the major itself would be like a business analyst. That's actually not the route that I ended up taking, because I ended up going back to school after a year and a half off to get a master's degree in cybersecurity. So that's what I do now. I really like helping people, and I also like to make my brain have to work every day. I don't want to be stuck in a job where I'm doing the same thing every day. And so this field allows me to do that, and it forces me to do that. And it also allows me to help people at the same time. So that's what I ended up doing, and that's what I'm currently doing. And it's probably what I'm going to be doing for a long time, is cybersecurity is very important to this world and is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, pretty stable business to be going in. And with the pandemic, man, I imagine you're probably able to stay at home and still, I mean, did the pandemic change a lot for you? I feel like with your job, it wouldn't, at least.
So for me, I work for a manufacturing company. So at first we struggled a bit because of new mandates as far as how the employees work within the manufacturing plants and things like that.
Right.
But at Global HQ, it didn't stop a thing. We still operated the same way. They eventually forced us all to go home, but they allowed us to take all of our stuff from the office to our houses. So now I have a whole setup at my house. I got 3 monitors here in front of me right now as we speak. And it's a good time. And so the headquarters part was easy, but we managed to get everything in order at the manufacturing plants to where everything is working the way that it's supposed to and the way that it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And because it's a manufacturing company, the things that we produce are for people's home. It's a faucet company. And so everybody doing DIY projects and home renovation projects, because everybody worked from home for so long, orders just kept flowing, and they're still flowing. So at this point, we now have a problem with filling orders because of that.
Yeah, that's a good problem. That's a good problem.
Right. Business is booming at that point. And so that's what I say but I'm not doing anything. That's whereas we as a company are trying to figure out a way to keep those numbers down as far as time to order and time to ship on product.
Right. Well, and I was thinking about my interview with Russ, because he was another football player that I talked to about his experience, and take me through what a typical day would be like in your major from the morning until going to sleep and having to repeat.
So during the season, I was a morning lifter. So I would lift, I was a 7 a.m. lifter because we had 3 groups, 7, 8, 9. I would lift at 7 a.m. and then I would go to work because I worked in the IT department at my school at the time, or at the school at the time. Get off work at about 10 o'clock, and then I would have 2 classes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I'd go to those at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, and then I'd be done. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would have 3 classes. Yeah, they started pretty early, but then I would finish up right before we had meetings for practice. And then after whatever day it was, after I would go to class, I would go to the locker room and then go in to get treatment because I was constantly, filled with bumps, bruises, and injuries. Get treatment, go to meetings, and then we would head out to practice. I think that was 3:30 to 5:30. After practice, get some food in me, come home, watch film, watch practice. And then because I was an old grumpy man, I was in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock most days, man. And I'm still that way now. I can't stay up late anymore. These kids these days, I don't know how they do it, but I turned into a robot at that point. Same thing every day, just a cycle.
Once you're past 25, it's like you hit a wall. I've hit the wall at this point, but
it's bad. Like if I stay up past 9 o'clock too many days in a row, I turn into a zombie the next couple of days after that to catch up, and it is miserable.
But the reason why I asked you about like your daily routine, I don't think the average student would be able to handle an athlete's schedule. I mean, I feel like weren't there some educational opportunities or different things that you had to miss because of the demands of football?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So when it came to the summer, a lot of us missed out on internship opportunities. We couldn't do internships during school because of football. My senior year, my senior season, which is my 5th year there, I only needed 12 credits to graduate and be done with my minor. And because they were all computer science courses, many athletes are not in those classes. So that department itself had the weirdest of class times. One class was from 12 to 3:20 and one class was from 4 to 7:20, and it was like you can't have these classes at these times because you have athletes in them and they're going to miss practice. So coaches and advisors were fighting with the whole department about getting the class rescheduled or creating what they would call an independent study at the time that allows a student to take essentially a made up course where they get a full course workload,
Right.
but on a different schedule. So for those 3 classes that I had to take my senior season, 2 of the 3 were basically independent studies.
Well, I can remember watching a story on HBO, and this was like 5 or 6 years ago. And UND is not like this. I want to preempt it, but they were talking about the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, that some of the players were taking Swahili in order to remain eligible. Like,
oh man,
were you don't have to admit to this, like you weren't forced to take certain classes to remain eligible, right?
So that was, so yes and no. So because I had finished my major course classes in the 4 years, that 5th year I had to do something.
Right.
And the recommendation was to take something of that caliber where it was an easier class. I didn't have to do much and it wouldn't be too demanding. I was like, Coach, I'm gonna be honest with you. If you stick me in classes like that, I'm not gonna go. And at that point, they're gonna drop me from the classes, which is gonna deem me ineligible because I don't have enough credits to now play a sport. We don't want that. So at that point, that's when the conversation of the minor came into play, and we went from there.
Okay. What was the GPA that you had to maintain to be eligible?
I have no idea. I really don't know because I wasn't even close to being on the edge of it.
Okay.
I was a what was I, 3.2, 3.3 guy for most of my time there. I think I slipped like my first semester freshman year, but for the most part after that, I was a 3.3 or above.
Well, I mean, the thing that I've always respected about football players, you have to know something about memorizing stuff and recall because you have to know a playbook. Like, how difficult is it to know a playbook? That can't be easy.
Man, look. And so for me, because I understood football on a different level than some, and I would even go as far as saying most do, you have to learn more than just your position, right? So it becomes a piece, it becomes a puzzle. You have 11 guys on the field and they all have a job on every play to do a certain thing. And at that point, it makes my job easier to know what everybody is doing. That way I know if I can mess up or go off script or not.
Right.
And so if I know that I'm going off script, I need to know where my backup is and where I'm not backed up. And yes, that playbook is quite hefty. I distinctly remember when they emailed us the PDF, it was like 83 pages.
And yeah. How many, that's one play per page or no?
It was some schematic things, concepts, and then there were actual plays in there too. So I would imagine if I had to guess about 60 something plays on defense. I can't imagine what the offense was. That was way worse, I'm assuming. And they also would put in new plays as the season went on as well. So I don't like offense. There's too much thinking involved. Defense is easy. See ball, get ball. It's that simple.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too, man. Like, I want to do the hitting instead of getting hit too. I feel like that there is psychology involved with that. Am I wrong?
Absolutely not. You are 100% correct. I always tell because they all, everybody always like, you guys are crazy for doing that. And I'm like, it's a game of hammer and nail. If you play the hammer, it doesn't hurt. If you play the nail, it hurts.
Right.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Well, and I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but you were able to have the full college experience. There was some work-life balance where you were able to go out and have friends aside from football. What were some of the best experiences that you recall from that time, man? I remember seeing you out.
Oh man. It was, for me, it was just being out with people that I knew, having a good time. I wasn't the biggest partier, as one would say, as far as the substances and things that were used. But I was out, I was up late and hanging out with friends and teammates and other athletes and other regular students as well. And it was just the stories that I have to tell nowadays, I think, is the best part of it all.
Yeah.
Like it was fun living in the moment, but the funny stories and the laughter and the smiles that I get from people as I tell these stories is probably the best part for me.
The one memory I can recall, because it happened every time that I went on a trip, was we went to Golden Corral. I feel like we had a contract with them.
Oh, absolutely.
We would destroy that place.
Every time we would take up a whole quarter of the whole building and we would just make it our own. Anybody in the way got rolled over every time.
So going back to getting ready for game day, did you ever feel pressure to perform? I mean, there's always like angst before you get ready for a game, but did it ever impact your performance?
I think pressure was not the correct word because I didn't feel pressure. I mean, you don't feel pressure if you know what you're doing and you know who you are, right? So it was a matter of I knew what was expected of me and I was more than capable and more than willing to go out and perform to that level. Because I studied the teams that we played so much before the games. Mentally, I was focused and locked in and ready to do what was needed of me and to help my teammates and to help my coaches and just have fun at that point.
Yeah, the thing I'm getting to, I guess, is that for me, at least, if I had a bad performance in a game, it would be hard for me to let that go.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of where the mental health thing, I think, starts, is you lose confidence and then it just kind of snowballs from there.
So, and I understand that and that makes sense. But
Right.
For me, I'm going to speak for myself. For me personally, it was
Sure.
a matter of it's not me. Like this bad game does not define me. This bad game was one bad game out of however many good ones I've had. So it's like, all right, let's go back. Let's watch it. Let's see what we did wrong. Let's understand why we did it, if there was a true why, or if I was just out there being an idiot. And then let's make sure it doesn't happen again. It again, when it came down to it, if I was playing poorly, I would surely hear it, whether it be from teammates or from the coaches. Somebody was going to let me know if I wasn't already down and out on myself anyways. But it's a matter of, for me, I was always taught, you got to let it go.
Right.
Play the next play. That was another thing that Bart always did. He would do it with his hands. You got to play the next play, play the next play. And so you didn't have time to sit and sulk about it. You got to wash it down and play the next play because, again, you can't let it, like you said, you can't let it snowball. You got too many people out here depending on you to do your job on this next play that you can't think about what just happened.
Well, and something that happened that was pretty real. I mean, as unusual as it was for Andrew Luck to retire 2 weeks before the regular season and to walk away in the middle of the game for, I think the guy developed PTSD, and there's no shame in that. I think with the amount of hits that he took, like, what's your view as a former player of the way Andrew Luck walked away?
I think it was, I mean, I don't have an opinion on it. I feel like if anybody has anything negative to say about it, I'll be the first one to defend him because at the end of the day, that man has to live with the consequences of his decisions, not anybody else in this world. So if he wants to walk away for whatever reason that may be, whether it's because his left leg just itched too much that game, then let him do it. You can't make somebody do something that you want them to do because that's not how this works. He's an adult. That man can do whatever he wants to do. And I think when it comes to mental health in general and athletes, I get super defensive and very quickly when it comes to people who aren't athletes having these opinions on athletes making these types of decisions because you have no idea what it feels like to go through what we go through. And I'm going to take a step back and say it's even worse for people in the pros because the fans are 10 times worse at that level. And so it's a matter of you have no idea what this person has gone through to get here. You have no idea the pressures they're dealing with at home. You have no idea of anything that's going on in their life that's not posted on social media. So for you to sit here and judge them off a decision that they're making is a problem that I'm not going to allow to happen in front of me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, one thing that I thought about, and I wrote about it on my website, for what that's worth, is that, Andrew had recently had a child. Having children can really kind of change your outlook of, hey man, I want to be able to not be in pain while I'm holding my kid.
And that's the thing. And people don't understand that, oh, he's young, he's got years in him. You're right, he does, and he wants to keep it that way. He doesn't want to be 30 years old, but with the body of a 92-year-old. He doesn't want to end up with these traumatic brain injuries and the symptoms that come along with them and the after effects of them because he's stuck around for too long. The man went to Stanford and got a degree from there, so he has a brain. He doesn't need football by any means, if we're being honest. So at that point, it was a decision for him to be there for his family in the future, not just in the present.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I asked Russ about, because I feel like when you're an athlete, sometimes you're viewed as the dumb jock, that you don't have something to contribute to the conversation. Did you ever feel that way?
Me personally, no, I didn't. I mean, there's a lot of people who I'm sure felt that way, but I don't pay any mind. I know who I am as a person, and I know that I can contribute to a lot of conversations. And so at that point, whatever predetermined judgment you have of me, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're entitled to that opinion. That's what I say all the time. I don't care that you view me a certain way. That's fine. You have that right, and you have that entitlement to yourself. I don't care. It doesn't define me. It doesn't make me any different of a person because I know who I am.
Right.
I don't let it get me out of character because if you think I'm an idiot, sit down and talk to me for 5 minutes. I guarantee your thoughts on me change.
Well, and something else that Russ talked about during his recruiting process was at the D1 schools, you're kind of viewed like cattle, more of a number. Was that the case for you and in your experience going back to that?
Yeah. It was. I mean, you go to these camps and they put a jersey on you, and it's a number. That's all it is. And as you get funneled through the system, I mean, it becomes. And even at Division II and Division III schools, you have these programs with 100, 115, 120 kids on it.
Right.
Kids are going to get swept up by the system at the end of the day, and it's unfortunate. But again, bring it back to what I said earlier. This is a business. These coaches earn money because they are being paid to win games. They don't win, they get the boot. They get shown the door. And so they have to play the best players. And unfortunately, sometimes that comes at the expense of needing other players to play certain roles.
Well, and not to put down the GLBC and the conference that we played in, but looking back at the playoff experience that we had, there's a difference between teams from Indiana than when you compare them to like teams from Texas and throughout the country. They're built different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a different world out there for sure. Some of those guys are pretty big, and it's outside of the Midwest itself. I don't know what's in the food or what's in the water, but they just make them differently in those areas. I wish I had some of that in my diet and in my blood, but
yeah,
I played the hand that I was dealt.
Well, and having played as long as you did, I was curious. Did you ever have a concussion documented?
I had 2 that were documented.
2.
I know for a fact that there were more than that.
Okay. Are you ever worried about the long-term effect of playing?
Worried? No. I think it's gonna happen. Yes. I do think it's in the future. I'm hopeful that there is something in place to, as far as medicine goes, that helps with it down the line. I do think that what I do for work will help prolong it. But yeah, unfortunately, the way that I played,
yeah,
I do think it's down the pipeline for me.
Well, and something that it's not like you have eligibility left, but something that I think about is like, should college athletes be paid? I mean, they're sacrificing their body, and sure, they get an education, but how much is that worth if you're only able to get so much out of it with the demands of football?
Yeah. I think I don't know. I really don't have an opinion on it because I can truthfully understand and empathize with both sides of it. I do think the way that the NCAA profits off of athletes in general, I think that something more should be given to these athletes who aren't being paid.
Yeah.
But I know it becomes a dicey conversation when you talk about what's going on in today's NCAA world with these kids making. Some of these athletes are making more than their coaches, and it's insane to me. But I mean,
I do like that that players are able to make money off of their own name. That seems fair.
Yes, I do. Yeah. It's a fair trade-off because at this point, the coaches and the schools and the NCAA itself has been making so much money off of us. It's not even funny. And so I think it's about time that these kids can start making money off of their own names.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of family pride at that point too, because now you're doing this not only for you, but for your family. And it's benefiting you and your family as well.
Yeah. And I've talked to other athletes, like sometimes $20 is not a given for some players. Like, it's a lot tighter budget than most people realize, even with the benefits that you're given as an athlete. And something else that I know about, the hours for like a cafeteria being open or a professor's office hours. Like there are only certain windows that you can have access to certain things, right?
Exactly. So these professors don't sit around waiting for us hours on end and things like that. They can't stay till 7, 8 o'clock at night to answer questions that you may have or help you with an assignment because they've got families and lives outside of being professors. So yes, it definitely is a laundry list of sacrifices made for all athletes, not just football players, but all athletes at the college level that people who don't play sports don't understand. And that's not to discredit or discount the fact that regular students do struggle, but it's a different level of sacrifices being made that they don't see. And naturally, as people, you get upset about things you don't understand, right? And so I feel like if they knew the sacrifices being made, they would be more empathetic and sympathetic to college athletes. But again, can't fight it, everybody.
That's right. And one game that I recall, I know you'll remember this one. I think UND played in 5 overtimes. Remember when we were on CBS Sports Network? Did you get to play in that game, man?
So yeah, that was what was it? I think was that Halloween?
Who'd you play? I couldn't remember.
We played St. Joe's that night. Quadruple overtime game. So that night I actually played most of that game. So we at the time John Strickland was our strong safety. And at that time we thought he had a fractured collarbone. So we sat him for the entire fourth quarter and I ended up playing the rest of that game.
Yeah.
To make matters worse, I had a partially torn bicep that I was playing with. So that was interesting.
So let me ask you this, now that you brought that up. I mean, there's injuries, even if you're not on the injury report. There's bumps and bruises that go unlisted. Am I wrong?
Yes, but it's not because teams per se are trying to hide it. It's not on the list if the athlete doesn't report it.
Right.
If I'm hurt and I tell you that I'm hurt, it goes on the list. Whether or not I play because of that is a different conversation to have. But if I tell the trainers or the team doctors that I'm hurt, whatever it is that I'm hurting, whether it's a hangnail, that hangnail goes on the injury report, and then I'll just be listed as Aeneas White, hangnail, third finger from the left hand.
Yeah. We want to know what finger.
Right. No limitations in practice or in this game. But as an athlete, you know that certain documented injuries are going to land you on a list of not being able to do things. So you do refrain from, reporting them per se.
So going back to the overtime game, my question to that is, should the NFL change overtime rules? Having played 4 overtime game, what's your view on that?
I think there was nothing wrong with the rules of the overtime for the NFL right now. I feel like if you let a team go down and score a touchdown, especially as easily as Kansas City did, you do not deserve a chance to come back. You just don't.
Right.
It's that simple. And I'd argue with somebody on Facebook with this for about 3 hours the other day. You don't deserve a chance to fight back at that point. You got taken behind a shed and beat up, and they stole your lunch money in less than like 3 minutes. You don't deserve to play on offense at this point.
No.
Because at that point, we're just prolonging this game, and that's how injuries happen. You talk about playing a 15-minute overtime period. What if they go into a tie again? Now we're doing another one? Right. People are going to get hurt.
Well, and you're playing Thursday night games during the regular season. That was an added element that wasn't there,
exactly
3 or 4 years ago.
It's insane. People don't understand that. And again, it's people who don't play the game trying to fight this fight.
Right.
You get a 4 overtime game or 15-minute quarters. Now you're playing a full second game at this point. Somebody's going to get severely hurt, guaranteed. Then you're going to be hurt because your fantasy team is down because your quarterback's lost. No, stop it.
Right. Well, and what was, looking back at the totality of your football career, what was probably the most memorable moment?
Oh man, that whole senior season for me. There was a lot of a lot of anger from that senior class because of the season that we had in 2016. And we did not feel right. Like it was an unspoken level of rage in that group that unconsciously got pushed onto everybody else, and it sparked a team that was not going to settle for that ever again that next season. And I distinctly remember going to the GLVC kickoff that summer and sitting next to Quincy.
Right.
And they were tweeting at us about the game that they had beaten us in the year before. And I was so angry about it because I wanted to say something, but I knew I couldn't. So I screenshotted the tweet. And at that point, it became a revenge tour because everybody really thought at that point they were better than us. And then we got picked to be 4th in conference that year again. And I was like, oh no, this is it. It became very, very, very bad. And so at that point, it was like every team that we had lost to the season before had to get embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the one thing I did not like about Bart is he did not like he was not okay with running up to score on teams. And with how we got beat the year before, we didn't really get blown out by anybody, but a lot of us, especially that senior class, felt disrespected. And so we wanted to be very disrespectful back, but he wouldn't let us.
Yeah, I guess what's the biggest life lesson that you can take away from football?
From football? Ooh.
Yeah.
And it's it's the notion of teamwork. Right. Everybody's got a job on the team, and you've got to do your job. If everybody does their job and communicates, we win. And that was, and it always was something that was real to me, but even it was one day we were arguing about something and he was like, just talk. Even if you're wrong and we're all on the wrong page together, we're still right. And at that point, it really clicked with me. And I was like, you know what? This old fart is right. He makes a whole lot of sense. And then at that point, it clicked on a different level for me as far as communicating and working with the team. If everybody's always on the same page, you really can't go wrong. You can't lose.
Well, and that's something that kind of blows my mind about our country. With as much as we love sports, you would think that sports would be a good metaphor on how we can work together and communicate to solve our problems. But when you look at how Colin Kaepernick and Aaron Rodgers are viewed. I mean, even sports has become divisive. That's a little scary to me.
It's we live in a world where everybody wants to nitpick on what they truly believe in. We want a world where we have the ability to choose to do things, and everybody wants that. But if somebody or something that you support chooses something that you don't like, now there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that is a trending topic around a lot of things in this world going on right now, sports being one of them. We want people to have freedom of speech and want everybody to think for themselves and not be sheep. But when somebody that you look up to says something that you don't like, now they should shut up, or they should just do this or do that. Or you want famous people to use their platforms to make change or make a difference and stand up for things. But when they do, and you don't like it, shut up and just play your sport. It's not how that works. You can't pick and choose when you want to do this and when you don't want to do this.
Yeah, man, it's you know, in my business where you're putting your art out to be subjected to opinion, it can be a poisonous thing. But take me to your last semester in school, like you're done with your senior season. How out of place did it feel to not have the commitments of football that final semester?
So luckily for me, I was finished as soon as that season ended. Like season ended late November, the semester ended in January. Now, unfortunately for me, I had a thumb surgery that I had to get. So I spent the next 3 months after that recovering from that surgery.
Okay. So a little bit of you know, wear and tear that had to get taken care of. But one other thing I forgot to ask you about, you're getting ready for a game. What are you listening to music wise, man, to get pumped up, ready to go?
So this process would start at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I would wake up for every game and create a playlist.
All right.
And it would take me through the entire day. I would start off with some old school slow jams, take it back to when my parents were young and things like that. And then I would bring it into like the hip hop R&B of the early 2000s. And then like right around warm up and game time, it would get really, really ratchet. And it was a whole lot of cussing going on and some bad language here and there, but it was time to ramp it up a little bit, crank up the juice and get going. That pregame ritual was, whew, it was a good one, man.
Did you have any other pregame rituals that stand out?
Oh, so we would have our, if it was a home game and we played at night, we'd have our team meals at 2 o'clock, and then immediately I would go to the weight room and work out, and then I would hop in the shower, get my bottom half on, so pants, tights, tape, socks, cleats, the whole nine, then get my wrist taped, and then I would just go out to the field and sit out there and mess around a little bit, but keep it pretty controlled. I didn't like to be talked to or bothered on game days, especially when we had like visitors or recruits in and things like that. So I would put a towel over my head. And then I would put my headphones on top of those so you couldn't see my face and you didn't feel the urge to talk to me.
Fair enough, man.
I didn't want coaches, teammates, don't talk to me. If you need something, write it down or point to it. But yeah, other than that, and then right before game time, I would find our trainers and get a smelling salt from them. Needed that before the game.
Yeah.
Then we'd go out there and do the coin toss, and right before the coin, or right after the coin toss, right before kickoff, I would look up in the stands and find my mom.
Yeah.
I had to find her, and then I was ready to go.
What did it mean to have your parents see you play at the college level, man?
It was great. They have both literally been there from me or for me through this entire journey, all the way from when I was a little kid, all the way through college. I don't know. Well, I know a lot of kids don't get that support system, especially not from both parents. And I can tell you it's something that I've never took for granted. My junior season, found out my dad had cancer, and he was supposed to miss a lot of things. He was supposed to not work. He was supposed to basically be house ridden unless he was doing radiation treatments. He found a way, I don't know how, but he ended up finding a way to make it to all of our home games that season. And it tore me up that we were bad that year, but it meant so much to me to have him in the stands with me. And I know a lot of people don't get to see both of their parents, but it is something that I cherished a lot and appreciated from both of them.
Well, and something that I respect about you, man, is that you've thought in the long term. You're still staying in shape as a former athlete. What would be some suggestions for former athletes to make sure that they're healthy and are in a good place after they're done playing?
Oh man, don't stop first of all, because if you stop, it's really hard to start back up. I would say try to change the way you work out. We're not meatheads anymore, so try to find different methods. Get help, whether it be mentally or physically. Talk to somebody, figure it out, because it is a rough spot and you do feel lost after it's all over. I was angry after our last game because we had lost. I was very, very upset, but I think for like the first week after that season ended and my career was done, I cried myself to sleep every night. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was lost. It was all bad, and it clicked because I had finals to deal with, but luckily I was able to snap out because of that. But it hit me hard and it was bad, and I don't recommend doing it that way, but if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But I would definitely recommend talking to somebody and getting that figured out. Yeah. And as far as physically goes, just eat right, stretch, drink your water, and work out still.
What's next for you, brother? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? And is there any ambitions of staying in sports as a coach or something like that?
I don't know yet as far as sports goes. I know I'm too grumpy and too impatient right now to coach. As far as the next few years, I told my boss a couple of weeks ago actually that if nothing holds me here, I'm getting out of Indiana within the next 3 years.
Good for you.
Probably going south, maybe in Texas somewhere, but that is yet to be determined. But yeah, next 3 years I'm getting out of Indiana. As far as work goes, I'll still be able to work for the same company, so I have no intentions on leaving there. But at that point I'll be very developed in my career, and so I can take off and go elsewhere if I need to, but I really don't want to, nor do I see myself doing it.
And then where can folks reach out to you and follow you on social media if they feel
compelled? Oh man, Instagram username is I think APW_7.
That sounds right to me.
And Twitter, I think it's APW__7 because I had to make a second one. Yeah, and I'm on Facebook too.
All right, brother. Anything else you want to add?
No, man. Keep doing what you're doing, though, man. I love seeing this, hearing from you, catching up with you every time I get the chance to, man.
Fantastic. Folks, to hear this again, you can check out my website, jbkonair.com, and subscribe to the podcast by searching JBK On Air. Until next time, have a great day and a better tomorrow.